Members, the Senate Taxes Committee will come to order. It's Thursday, May 2nd, 2024. The first item on the agenda is approval of the minutes from May 1st, 2024. Are there any corrections to the minutes? There are none, and the minutes are adopted. We have in front of us Senate File 5234. Senator Rest.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Sorry, Senator Rest. We are first going to take Senate File 5234
yes, I was
from
going
the
to move
table.
to take
Senator Rest
Senate
moves
File
it to take it from the table.
5234 is amended off the table.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Senator Rest.
Mr. Chairman, I have a technical amendment. It is the A12, just to begin with.
Senator Rest
And-
offers the A12.
And I'm going to ask staff to go through this. It is in pointing out where there are changes that actually make a difference. Some of these are really technical. They reflect the advice that we routinely get from the Department of Revenue, as well as others. So I would like to ask Ms. Pollock if she would go through the A12 for us.
Ms. Pollock to the A12.
Mr. Chair and members, Mr. Sylvia and Ms. Johnson and I will go through the A12 amendment.
Fine, thank you.
I would also note that it reflects some feedback from Ms. Sandy and Mr. Powell in the revisor's office.
Thank you.
Lines 1.3 to 1.8 of the amendment clarify the calculation of the subtraction for Foreign Service pension income. Line 1.9 clarifies the terminology for taxpayers eligible for the subtraction for discharged coerced debt. Lines 1.10 to 1.12 specify the types of career and technical education programs for which expenditures qualify for the credit. Lines 1.13 and 1.14 specify the year in which a credit for a master's degree program in a licensure field may be claimed. Lines 1.15 to 1.20 clarify the definition of aviation in the credit for tuition for in the credit for employer-paid tuition for employees in an aerospace or aviation program. Lines 1.11 and 1.22 specify that the employee must be a Minnesota resident to claim the employer credit, for the employer to claim the credit for tuition paid for employees in an aerospace or aviation program. 1.23 clarifies the definition of employer for the aerospace and aviation tuition payment credit. Lines 1.24 to 1.26 clarify the expiration date of the credit for the aerospace and aviation tuition payment credit. 1.27 corrects a cross-reference. 1.28 clarifies the sunset date of the Shakopee Area Workforce Development Scholarship Credit. Mr. Chair, Mr. Sylvia and Ms. Johnson will continue for the next several lines.
Mr. Sylvia.
Mr. Chair, members, line 1.29 makes a change to Article 2, Section 4. This was one of the tribal property tax exemptions. This simply fixes a typographical error within the language.
Madam Chair.
Ms. Johnson.
Or, Mr. Chair? Line 2.1 makes it clear that the report that's required, or the commitment that's required for the local affordable housing aid maintenance of effort requirement is submitted to the Minnesota Housing Finance Agency. And line 2.3 changes the Section 18 effective date to clearly associate that section with the report required under 477A.35. And lines 2.5 through 2.8 are a rearranging and slight modification of language to remove any potential ambiguity in the recipients required to submit the public safety aid report.
Member questions or comments on the A12? Oh, Mr. Sylvia.
Mr. Chair and members, line 2.9 of the amendment makes a change to Article 3, Section 12 in the minerals article. There was an error in the amount transferred for a particular distribution year. This is correcting that, and it would match the author and the spreadsheet's intent. The number is not changing, it's just being corrected.
Ms. Pollock.
Mr. Chair, line 2.10 of the amendment corrects a cross-reference in the large-scale data center sales tax exemption. Lines 2.11 and 2.12 correct the source of the fund from which the sales tax refund for construction materials is paid for the Hills Beaver Creek School District sales tax exemption. Line 2.13 corrects the date for which claims may be filed for the construction materials sales tax exemption for the Worthington School District. And then lines 2.14 through 3.2 specify how refunds for sales and purchases for exempt construction materials for housing projects in Duluth and Ely and projects in the redevelopment districts in St. Cloud are claimed. The language here is based on codified provisions for the method for claiming sales tax refunds for codified exemptions, but because these exemptions are not codified, we need to state the language more specifically here. And then finally, Mr. Chair, 3.3 of the amendment corrects a cross-reference.
Now, members, questions or comments on the 812? Senator Rest.
So, did we adopt the amendment? No. We haven't adopted amendment. So I move we adopt.
Senator Rest moves the 812.
812.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? 812 is adopted. Senator Rest.
Mr. Chairman, I move also the A11 amendment.
Senator Rest moves the A11 amendment.
Mr. Chairman and members, you may recall I had a bill presented to the committee dealing with the repurposing the sales tax that built the ballpark in Minneapolis. I believe that needs a lot more attention to it than just putting it in the bill. And so what this amendment does is to, in a sense, is to keep that discussion going, but at this point, just ask the Commissioner of Revenue to review and evaluate for us the statute under which the tax was first imposed by the state, or required by the state to be imposed in Hennepin County, and really mostly indicates who the commissioner should or may consult with in that review.
Members, questions on the A11? There are none. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? A11 is adopted. Senator Rest.
Mr. Chairman, I believe those are my amendments. The only other amendment I have, so if you would, I've asked when you're not able to preside, that Senator Weber does. And so if you would pass the gavel to him right now, then we can proceed with your amendment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Other amendments, members? Senator Klein.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I offer the A4 amendment, and I can speak to the amendment if members have it in front of them.
A4 amendment is being distributed. And you may proceed and begin the explanation, Senator Klein.
Thank you, Chair and Senator Rest. The amendment addresses line or page 130 in the A2 amendment. And Mr. Chair, so this was the provision that I had that created barriers around the Department of Revenue reassessing an entity, a corporation or another entity, and changing their tax burden without legislative activity. And we felt it was an important provision within the bill, but there were concerns by the Department of Revenue that this would incur a cost to them because they would be required to sort of increase their number of audits substantially to make sure that they didn't make errors down the line and change their practice of sort of sampling to address tax assessments. So I worked closely with the Department of Revenue, the Commissioner, Commissioner Marquardt, to develop language that accomplishes our purpose and protects corporate entities from penalties if they are, in good faith trying to pay the tax burden that they were told was theirs. And the A4 amendment is that language that was sort of worked on with the department and accomplishes our purpose without incurring the fiscal note.
Members, any questions? Seeing none, Senator Klein moves the adoption of the A4 amendment. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion's carried. Amendment is adopted.
Okay, give them the-
Further amendments on the bill. Senator Weber.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I offer the A8 amendment.
Senator Weber offers the A8 amendment. Being distributed. While it is distributed to your amendment, Senator Weber.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The A8 amendment basically deals with the prevailing wage item on the local sales tax provision that is included in the bill. What this does is that this limits the prevailing wage requirement to all metropolitan counties and eliminates counties outside the 7-county metropolitan area. The reason for this, and Mr. Chairman, is that, and granted, counties and those entities, municipalities within those counties are free to require that if they so choose. I visited with one of my city administrators who in a previous career was a consulting engineer. Every time that he worked with a community on a project that included a prevailing wage requirement, his recommendation to them was that do not accept any grants from the state of Minnesota or that require you to use prevailing wage unless that grant is at least 25% of the total cost of the project, because that's how much extra this provision costs these projects. And so as a result, he said, if they have a $4 million project and have to accept a state grant, or in this case, use sales tax to fund it, he said, you've automatically raised the cost of that project to $5 million. And part of it is because of the inequities within the prevailing wage system itself that the Department of Labor and Industry refuses to correct. Part of it is because of the increased administrative costs. He said, even as an engineer, I would have to raise my fees to cover the additional costs I incurred as an engineer to keep track of all the different parts of the prevailing wage. Even to lay a flat piece of cement, he said there were like 5 or 7 different wage categories in there. He said, none of our contractors have that kind of a breakdown. So he said, I spent all kinds of time chasing down contractors trying to figure out who got paid for what, because most of the time their staff did all the different items that were included in that. And so, Mr. Chairman, I recognize that Chair Rest is concerned about one of the provisions of the tax bill, that being adding a synthetic nicotine to the tax structure. I can accept the argument that that's a leveling of the playing field, and I don't really consider that a tax increase. But this provision, adding the prevailing wage requirement to cities that use local sales tax, that is, in my opinion, the true tax increase that's included in this bill. And so as a result, Mr. Chair, I would move the A8 amendment.
Senator Rest to the A8.
Well, sometimes we hear people who are in my position right now saying, well, I haven't seen this before and it wasn't shown to me, and so I'll just have to think about it. Well, I have thought about it and I support it.
Further comments on the A8? Seeing none, all in favor of the A8, say aye. Aye. Opposed? A8 is adopted. Further amendments to the bill, Senator Nelson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have the A5 amendment.
Senator Nelson offers the A5 amendment, which will be distributed. While it is distributed, Senator Nelson.
Yes, Madam Chair, members, the A5 amendment is to Article 6 in the bill dealing with the sales tax, local sales tax dollars. I hope, Madam Chair, you received an email about this. Okay, well, I know you'll understand exactly what it is. This has to do with the specified capital projects, local authorization requirements in Article 6, Section 3, and it keeps all of the current language, of course, but in discussing this with the areas outside of the metropolitan area, this little amendment tries to make sure that the trails that are allowed as part of that local sales tax authorization that are already allowed, would be allowed without the state necessarily coming in saying these must be allowed. It would include those trails that actually are those connector trails. Those trails that actually connect one trail system to another trail system, really I think the most effective types of trails. It also, if as you get the amendment, you'll see it connects regional defined assets. It gives some examples like a regionally designated park, higher education institution. We do believe it's important that it be included in a regional or community trail system plan, of course. And the third criteria would just be that it connects spaces of 75 acres to other trails or commercial areas. And the point is making our trails more usable, more accessible, more connected, as more and more people look to our trails beyond even just walking trails, but bike trails, getting from one place to another. And this was brought to me by my community, hoping that we could extend the good work done here, Madam Chair, to include this particular provision so that the trails, the connector trails that are the most economically sound, actually, connecting to those other trail systems are allowed.
Senator Rest to the A5.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Nelson, again, I have not seen this before. However, I'm not going to say right now that I support it. Okay. But have you looked at, Mr. Chairman, Senator Nelson, have you looked at the provisions in the tax bill regarding the sales tax general law changes? And how would you see this as contradicting anything that they have, or if any other members have looked at that?
Senator Nelson.
I mean, that bill that's in here is indeed it's a work in progress. It's kind of an experiment in moving the authority for local sales taxes back onto the shoulders of the local governments with lots of guardrails. But we're also trying to make sure that there is some flexibility. Now, it doesn't mean, go for broke and do anything you want kind of thing, but I don't begrudge the local governments some flexibility in their decisions about what capital projects mean and so forth. And in particular, and this is not necessarily to your amendment, but have received objections to and I prefer the word objections rather than concerns, because concerns mean that somehow everybody's being altruistic. They're so concerned. But really what they mean is they object to something that's in your bill. And in the House bill, there is a prohibition about using or considering, local governments considering a locally authorized by referendum sales tax on sports arenas, for example. And I'm very reluctant to exclude that. It's not in this bill. So I'd be interested in what anybody else on the committee thinks about it. I'm inclined to say it's okay, but does anybody else want to weigh in on Senator Nelson's amendment, if it would affect your area of the state?
Senator Hauschild.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Senator Nelson. We had a chance to briefly talk about this amendment just right here off the committee floor, and I had brought up some of these concerns earlier when we heard this provision, and I also worked on an amendment. I think Senator Nelson's amendment is also good. I would maybe give an oral amendment to move it to 25 acres rather than 75. If that's appropriate at this moment. And then, but maybe before I do that, I don't want to mess up this bill, but I do have an amendment that maybe does a little bit more. So would it be okay to perhaps accept both, and then we can work on it in conference committee about how this language can work better? Or would you prefer, Madam Chair, that we wait?
No, Mr. Chairman, it's hardly 9 o'clock. We have a lot of time. We can talk about improving this bill.
Senator Nelson.
It's hardly 100 pages long. We can talk about that.
Okay.
Senator Nelson.
So, Mr. Chair, Madam Chair, Senator Hauschild, I do believe that is a friendly amendment. And
Yes.
to answer your question, Senator Rest, this is not at all contradictory. I do remember the discussion we had here, very supportive. And in fact, one of my communities came to me immediately afterwards and said, this is a good step. But looking at the way the language currently is, there would only be 1 or 2 trails that would qualify. And so this is to really make what you have put in the bill here even more effective. And if we think about how trails work, as we are developing more and more trails, it is those short connector trails where you might have a mile of a connector trail, but it might connect you to 99 miles of trail that's already in place. And so that is the genesis of the amendment we have. And as Senator Hauschild and I were chatting briefly, his broader amendment is fine too. It includes some of the things that are already included in the legislation that you have here in front of us in the A2. But I don't see anything contradictory in either one of these, except Senator Hauschild's oral amendment, I think makes the A5 even more effective, because the A5, you'll notice on line 1.112, as it's adding what other trails are eligible, it also notes that connects 75 acres to other trails or commercial areas. And maybe that's too large of a qualifying characteristic. We didn't want it to be so broad that it would look like it was undermining in any way. And I think Senator Hauschild's amendment at 25 acres makes a lot of sense in maybe different parts of the state as well. So I would say that's a friendly amendment. And I would suggest, Madam Chair, that the A5 is amended by Senator Hauschild is not contradictory, but makes the intent even reaches more parts of the state.
Mr. Chairman, instead of having an amendment to the amendment, Senator Nelson, you might consider just incorporating that suggestion into your amendment, changing 75 to 25, and we only have to take one vote.
Beautiful.
Senator Nelson.
Mr. Chair, Madam Chair, that is a brilliant idea of efficiency. I would like to incorporate the Hauschild amendment on line 1.112, changing 75 to 25.
Ms. Pollack, can you report the amendment?
Mr. Chair, the incorporation to the A5 amendment would be on 1.12, delete 75 and insert 25.
Members all understand the A5 as incorporated. Further discussion? All those in favor of the A5, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Amendment is adopted. Further amendments on the bill? Nope. Senator Haushow.
I have. That A6 amendment.
Senator Haushow offers the A6. It will be distributed. Senator Haushow.
Mr. Chair, members of the Tax Committee, you may remember from the minerals article that there were conversations that could be had between the Iron Range delegation, and those conversations have been happening. Senator Farnsworth and I have had several good meetings about the bill, and for those conversations, we came up with two ideas. One would be that for the projects that are bonded through the minerals article, any project over $1 million would present their plan in front of the Iron Range Resources and Rehabilitation Board and the Iron Range delegation. The second component is that it gives the Iron Range Resources and Rehabilitation Commissioner the ability and flexibility to determine whether or not she would want to take out bonds, revenue bonds for the projects, or use her existing budget to fund those projects. Those were two provisions that Senator Farnsworth and I agreed would be good changes to the mineral article.
Senator Rest to the A6.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Klein, if we adopt this amendment, are we likely to see additional amendments on the floor dealing with the minerals article?
Senator Haushow.
Mr. Chair and Madam Chair, there will be other possible changes, particularly regarding the revenue bond component of the bill. However, those are not ready at this time. But in terms of the floor, I don't believe we would have other amendments on the floor.
Senator Rest.
Mr. Chairman, I would support the amendment.
Further questions on the A6? There are none. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? A6 is adopted. Further discussion or amendments on the bill? Senator Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senator Ress, we are on such a good, positive roll with amendments. I don't have an amendment. But I'm thinking about what I could potentially amend onto this bill, and I just came up with a really good idea. I think you're going to object to it, and I know you'll have concerns about it, but maybe Senator Klein and I could come up with a sports betting amendment that we could put on the tax bill. I think the timing would be absolutely stellar right now. But this is great. This is great cooperation and bipartisanship, Senator Rest.
Further discussion on the bill? Senator Rest.
Mr. Chairman, then I would move that Senate File 5234 as amended be recommended to pass.
Senator Rest moves that Senate File 5234 as amended be recommended to pass. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Senator Rest, your bill is passed.
Thank you very much. I usually at this point, people make speeches about this being the last meeting of this committee for this session, but I'm going to remain flexible about that, and there may be other things that come before us. And so I'm going to refrain from doing that and make a proper expression of my gratitude to all of you at some later point. So, Mr. Chairman, if you would adjourn the committee.
Committee is adjourned.